We're going to go through this worksheet with these two worksheets, and then when you come to class tomorrow, we'll kind of practice some of the stuff we learned here today. So first thing, slope-intercept form is the name of the equation we use. So y equals mx plus b is called slope-intercept form because of the fact that it has a slope and an intercept, as opposed to y equals kx, which only has a slope or a constant, but it doesn't have an intercept. So this is slope-intercept form. And so this m, I told you guys the m represents slope. So you can fill that in right here. M is slope, right? And then this b is your intercept. Okay, and I should put y. It's your y-intercept. So what a y-intercept is, and let me zoom in a little bit here. It is where the line crosses the y-axis. So the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. So we have m is slope, and then we have the b, that's your y-intercept, right? And so we still have this y and this x right here. What this is the output, okay, or the dependent, right? And then this x, this is your input or your independent. Okay, so whenever I make my equation, once I find my slope and my intercept, I can input a number and that function is spit out an output. So we'll practice those as well. But so the y is your output or your dependent variable. The m is the slope. The x is your input or the independent variable, and then the b is the y-intercept. This m is also called, and I'll put it right here, the coefficient. And it's called the coefficient because of the fact that it is attached to the x variable. So the x variable, the number in front of the x variable is called the coefficient, and it's the slope. So coefficient and slope is the same thing. Okay. All right. So the first one says, if we go down, the first question says, write an equation of a line given the slope and y-intercept. So we're given the slope and we're given the y-intercept, so it's asking us to write an equation. So if the slope is -2, again, it's y equals mx plus b. If the slope is -2, that goes where the m goes. So we put y equals -2x. If the y-intercept is +5, then we go ahead and put, it's 5, so we put +5 because it's positive. So it'd be -2x plus 5. On the next one, it says the slope is 3/4. So again, we put that where the m goes, the coefficient tied to the x, right? And then the y-intercept is -3 or -3. The y-intercept is -3. So in my equation, I'm going to list that as -3. So the y-intercept, it crosses on the -3 on the y-axis, but in my equation, I just put -3. -3. So again, it crosses on the -3, but in my equation, I put 3/4 x minus 3. All right, so that's making an equation if you're given the slope and the y-intercept. What happens if you're not given the slope and y-intercept and they give you a graph? Well, it's the same thing we've learned so far. If you have a graph, you have to go rise over run. So we rise up from this point to that point. And I know I'm going from this point to that point because I read left to right. So I'm going this way. So I'm going from this point to that point, right? From left to right. and this is a positive slope because he's going uphill, puff, puff, positive all the way up. Therefore, I'm going to rise up 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to run 1, 2, 3. So my slope is the change in y was 4. The change in x was 3. The rise was 4. And the run was 3. So what is my slope? My slope is 4/3. Okay, now it's asking us what is the y-intercept. And again, the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. The y-axis is the vertical axis here. Okay, this is the y-axis here. So where does this line cross the y-axis? We can start at the top of it and bring your pencil down all the way until you figure out where that line crosses. It crosses right here, right? So if I was to, where's this point located? Where this is 0, -1, -2, -3, -4, and -5. So it crosses the y-axis at -5. So in order to find the y-intercept, really you just have to figure out where does that line cross the y-axis. It crosses at -5. So now it's asking us for the equation. What would the equation be? Well, I know that my slope is 4/3, so I can say that y is going to equal 4/3 times x. And then we know that the y-intercept is -5, so I put -5. Okay, so let's try the next one. The next one is the same thing, except this is a negative slope. This is a negative slope, and I know that because you'll be going downhill, nice negative, right? So again, we read from left to right. We're going to go from this point to that point. And so since it's a negative slope, my rise will actually be going down. 1, 2, I'm sorry, just 2. 1, 2. And then to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4. So my rise, and I'm sorry, it should be -2 because I went down 2. My rise is a -2. My run is 4. And so I don't like the negative just on one number, because if one number is negative, then the whole fraction is negative. So really, we'll write that as -2/4. The whole fraction is negative. Now I'm going to ask you, where is the y-intercept? Where does it cross the y-axis? So this is the y-axis, and it tells us that this is 2. If that's the case, then it crosses at the 1. Okay? Our y-intercept is at the 1. So it's asking for the equation for y equals -2/4 times the input times x plus the 1. Flip over to the back.